Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we are back again talking about episode 566, A Most Extraordinary Conclusion.
Yeah.
This
it.
I know.
This is it.
This is both an extraordinary conclusion for the show and for us.
Yeah. It's weird. It's oddly cathartic to feel like this is the end of it. Because once we started doing the Aftermath stuff, how many episodes of Aftermath have we done?
15.
Yeah.
Or this is our 15th.
Yeah, that's 15 divided by 4 weeks is minus the ones we had off. That's 4 months.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we did 28 episodes of Novacom.
Yeah.
And then we did almost half of that.
Yeah.
Or over half of that in Aftermath
stuff.
So it's going to be fun to just deal with completely unrelated.
Oh, yeah.
Odyssey.
I mean, even these, having Eugene in the mix and, having old characters and stuff like that, it feels different enough. It's going to, I feel far enough removed from Novacom at this point that it's not a big deal. But it is going to be weird to be entirely out of that. And, whatever, if we do a mini-series or if we do one-offs or whatever, whatever that ends up being.
And we're doing cool. Kidsborough next. That is announced.
Yeah.
So we can say that.
Yeah.
Which is, more or less just a bridge to get us to whatever we decide to cover after that.
Yeah. I think it's an excellent cover.
Oh, yeah. I agree. And it is so disconnected from everything, which we'll talk about when we cover that next episode. This episode has no new voice actors over the last
transition.
one.
I'm so proud of you. You did such a good job.
The only one I noticed when we were when I was listening through it. What?
I said I just hope the Chalk Squad appreciates what you've done here.
Yeah. The only new voice I heard while listening was the voice of the nurse, but that is an unknown credit on the AIO wiki, so we can't really get into that.
Rip.
Other notes is that it aired a week after the last one, and Marshall Younger and Paul McCusker co-wrote and co-directed this episode, which they did for the last one as well. The first one had Hubler on it, so we've had nice evolution there or whatever. And this is the 6th track on
the
Eugene
album.
Returns, which is kind of a weird placement, but it ends up being then you have a lot of Eugene episodes throughout the rest of the album.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of
which
doing
is
it.
good. I guess without further ado, roll the promo.
Will do.
On the next Adventures in Odyssey, Whit has a plan to restore Eugene's lost memory. But not everyone thinks it's a good idea.
Are you absolutely certain about this?
As certain as I can be, Katrina.
Then there's little point in this entire experiment if you're only going to tickle my brain.
We've already pushed this treatment as far as we dare take it.
Will Eugene's memory ever return? Be sure to listen to the next Adventures in Odyssey.
The music is a runaway train.
Yeah, definitely. It's it feels like one of those scenes where I used to watch playing into the bit of me knowing a lot about Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
I had a Winnie the Pooh in the train robbery episode, and that's definitely the music that was playing as hilarious. Rabbit was laying down the tracks that the train is going on.
Rabbit, voiced by Will Ryan.
Oh,
I mean, probably not in that one, but in
newer. Oh yeah, I guess it would be.
Yeah, but
that's so weird. That obviously we've discussed that, but now it's it's hitting me, the tie-in of one of the most cherished things of my early childhood, and then my early adolescence /
Yep. Yeah, there's
same
a
voice actors.
A lot of crossovers. We got Owl, we got Rabbit, we got some Tigger.
Well, and then we have Petrie from Land Before Time, because I loved Land Before Time and I loved Petrie.
Yeah.
Which now is definitely just Eugene with wings, which is very odd for me to think about.
That's funny.
The vest turns into wings and he flies.
All right. Fan art would be much appreciated.
tweet at us at the WadFam Chalkpod. Nope, just WadFam Chalkpod.
Hey, look at you. You're
Every
learning.
time I have to correct myself.
Freaking 43 episodes in, and Andrew's learning.
Have we? I guess we've had the Twitter for the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had the Twitter before the podcast was launched because...
That's who Dylan is.
Yep. That is me. You caught me.
Thank you for securing that handle that was for sure not taken. And probably wasn't going to be.
Someone was going to take that one and hold it hostage.
Make you buy it for him.
I'm glad I jumped in. Yes, because everyone who listens knows I have loads of money.
I mean, you guys haven't seen his room. It's something to behold.
Oh, yeah. All right. So, yeah.
The episode picks up right where the old one left off.
Yep, exactly. We have Eugene going down with Connie to do the whole memory switch thing that they talked about in the last episode, and then Katrina and Whit watching from above.
Yeah.
And
the sound engineering is really good. I like this episode. This 3-parter feels a lot like a television 3-parter that airs back to back to back. Like they did that with Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series finale. It was a 4-parter, and they would air them like back to back to back. But they're all like obviously distinct episodes.
Gotcha. Yeah, shout outs to Mr. Glenn Montjoy, who is credited as the producer doing post-production sound engineering on this episode.
Is that a new name? It doesn't sound familiar.
It's not one that we've talked about before, but we also
I'm sure he is.
haven't always talked about this stuff.
Yeah, we just say how much we like it and then move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't always bother to... he's done surprisingly few episodes. Yeah, he's a relatively new addition. He came on with Sheep's Clothing.
Wow. I knew that episode was weird.
And then, and did Exceptional Circumstances and Between You and Me and Seeing Red. And then the Something Blue episode. So yeah, he's been around recently.
Yeah.
As kind of a mid-Novacom addition. Yeah. He's doing good stuff in this episode.
So anyway, as we were saying, this episode obviously picks up right where the last one ended, and Connie, if you remember, at the end of last episode was, basically strapping in. They're going to upload all their memories of Eugene to the Imagination Station and then download it from the Imagination Station into Eugene's brain using, obviously, the technology that he developed.
Yep. For Novacom.
Yeah, and so the biggest discussion right off the bat then is Katrina coming and approaching Whit as all this is about to happen. Like they're all strapping in, they're all ready before they put Eugene through this. Eugenia kind of busts in on Whit and is kind of asking him to leave out certain memories.
Yep.
Memories of pain, like of her dad dying and
death of Armitage Shanks.
Yeah.
Big Novacom deal.
Yeah. Every time you say that, I want to do my Armitage Shanks impression, but it takes a little bit of preparation in the voice, so I can't just do it off the cuff.
That's funny.
But yeah, and then so
Whit.
she talks to Whit, and Whit kind of shuts her down and brings up the whole like you can't pick and choose memories thing, which is cool.
Yeah,
it's an interesting discussion. The way that he phrased it was kind of weird.
It was a weird, because it does seem like the correct ethical decision to not alter memories. Yeah. But he goes kind of like
approves.
It's not it's not God's plan. Yeah. Is kind of Whit's framing of it, which was like,
yeah,
that's not maybe how I would frame it, but I get that what this show is.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he's a little, I don't know. I feel a little bit like he goes into lecture mode with Katrina, which is unfortunate.
And he does kind of talk down to her, and then she's kind of like, "Oh, well, I guess you're right." And whatever.
Yeah. And it seems like And I realize because it seems very real that Katrina would have that thought.
Yeah.
And false that she would ask.
Do something.
But I understand in a show, if you want to convey that, you have to have her talk about it. And like, that's fine. And I think it works. But
it is very much though, like Whit kind of playing Sunday school teacher and being like, well, you can't do this because that's not what God wants. And she says like, or Whit says like, don't you want like what's best for Eugene or something like that, which is very weird and very much kind of like God's given him the script for everything and what's going to happen, and so therefore he knows. And like, I agree with the decision. I think that our testimonies, as far as spiritually is concerned, are incredibly important. They're incredibly impactful, incredibly powerful. But like, you know, Whit could have been a little less condescending about it. Yeah. Like,
but
I mean, you know, what are you gonna do? He's gotta be God sometime. So
yeah. And then we jump to one of the smartest mechanics for this show, period, which is the let's do a clip show in the form of Eugene getting his memories downloaded. So it's just like an excuse to play all of these big moments from his past, which also is probably beneficial for new listeners who jumped in maybe around Novacom and have no idea what Eugene's about.
Yeah.
Because he was gone for so long. So this is like a great way of recapping. Yeah. 5 years later, hey, look, this is all the stuff he's been through.
Yeah, it's a flashback. Like, it's a flashback montage, like, kind of at the end of, like a TV show or something like that, where you kind of get choked up.
Yep. And it's both a good mechanic in that it, you know, is a good on-ramp for people, but it also is a really nice reward and some good nostalgia for those of us who have been with the show forever and can, like, place a lot, if not all of these clips.
Oh yeah.
And where they come from and that sort of thing, which I think is fun too.
Yeah, it's really good, and that happens a couple times, so across several characters. Like I think it starts with Connie, and then there's one with Bernard.
Yeah, and we get one with Katrina as well.
And Katrina.
And then later in the episode, we have one as well. When Eugene goes back.
And he gets all of them at once.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we don't get a Whit one.
Yeah.
I realized that, like, we didn't really need that, like, tacked on. But I think it is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, through, like, Connie's, we get, you know, her and Eugene getting fired from Wit's End. We've got them learning to drive.
Well, there's the
Connie's
whole bit with like
Eugene
applesauce.
Drive.
Yeah.
There's applesauce stuff. There's, you know, the mortal coil when Eugene becomes a Christian. There's that hilarious line of the you're a boy, so you don't know a thing about girls.
Oh yeah,
I'm a girl, so I know everything there is to know about boys and girls. Which is
so good.
It's
so
funny.
Good.
And then they have the Whit, or the scene where Whit has left and Eugene is not there. Like where Connie's like, hey, like Whit left, and he's like, what? And yeah. So it's
real good. And like obviously
that happened post Hal Smith's passing. They did that where we went off to the Middle East before bringing him back as Paul Hurlinger.
Yeah. Oh man. There's so much, like, it's those things where, like, obviously, like, as a listener, like, you get so much nostalgia coming back of like all these episodes, and it's like, man, like, these were all so good, and like I want to listen to them all again. Like, it has been so long since I've listened to Search for Whit. And Search for Whit's one of my favorite episodes. Like, or it's up there. And like all the stuff with Bernard and and like early Eugene stuff where he like really was this like snooty guy that like you kind of forget that, especially later on in the show.
And these episodes actually do a really good job of that, where props, like all the props in the world to Will Ryan, at the end of this episode when Eugene gets his memories back, he feels so different
yeah.
than he did when he didn't have his memories. And I don't know that I could point to, oh, these are the things that changed in his voice or that sort of thing.
I think it has to do so much with the fact that he's he's an insane voice actor. He's so good, but also like he's played Eugene normally so much that he knows how to play Eugene not acting like himself.
Yeah.
And
because he is Eugene, like you don't doubt that in any of the episodes.
Yeah.
But he's
sterilized.
He's way more sterile or manic.
Yeah.
And then you get like a truly just like a phenomenal end to this episode with the way Eugene comes across. Like it's
so
great.
Good.
I like the Bernard montage has stuff from the road trips when they find out that they're related.
Yeah.
And also everyone's favorite, Bernard beating Eugene at chess.
Yeah, I forgot that. Which is called back later too. It's so good. It's so good.
The thing that's really, I don't know, played funny for me is like we have this really long loving montage with Connie.
Yeah.
And one with Bernard that's like a little more humorous and not quite as much, but still like really like thorough and in depth and whatnot. And then we have the Katrina one, and it's just like 2 clips of them being in love.
Yeah, it's 2 clips of them being in love, and then I think is her dad dying one of them?
No, I think we might get that later in the episode. We get clips from their wedding.
Yeah.
But that's not until he goes back again.
Yeah.
So
basically, from there, like Eugene gets out of the imagination station. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh well, before he gets out, says to Tom, "Hey Tom, like it's time for you to do it."
Oh yeah.
And Tom goes through this whole thing where he's like, no. Like if you're trying to manufacture relationships, Eugene's not going to get that from a machine. He's going to get that from people. Like you need to be praying about this and not trying to solve it all with your technology.
Well, and just more specifically, I feel like he says like you need to pray about it, but like you need to give it time and give it patience. And the whole, like I would say this big, 3-episode arcs thing is like we have these 2 ideas of like prayer and patience, and then we have like desire and impatience, which is like, Eugene wants his memories back as soon as possible. Everybody wants his memories back as soon as possible. But then when you bring faith into the picture, it's like, well, you might not get it as soon as you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why, Whit and Connie and Bernard and, they kind of push back against, or they don't intentionally bring faith into it, I think. Because
correct.
They don't know if they'll get what they want.
Yeah, and that conversation with Tom pays off so well.
Yeah, it does.
At the end of the episode.
It really does.
But yeah, and so while Whit and Tom are having this conversation, Tom's refusing him, whatever, Connie runs in and is like, you got to come quick.
Yeah.
Eugene's. Eugene manically freaking out about the fact that it didn't work.
Yeah.
Saying that they need to up the dosage, increase the voltage, just completely like use everything they've got because he wants this so bad.
Well, does he describe it like it's like deja vu, like it's on the tip of his tongue and he doesn't it's like a word on the tip of your tongue. Like I feel such a strong connection to these things, but I don't actually have it. Like
yeah, no, absolutely. And then he says about that like you guys all got to experience things, but like I just got this weird sense of deja vu. And Bernard in the background is like, you thought you were a car? Which is
really funny.
Always like is one of those that has also always kind of stuck with me.
Oh yeah, and then
for whatever reason, because
I listened to it.
Classic Bernard.
I spent like 10 minutes trying to think of a car that started with like sounded like deja vu. There isn't one.
Yeah, Andrew, the joke is not like that there is a car that's deja vu or sounds like deja vu. I think the joke is about the road trip that Eugene and Bernard went on and the car stuff. And that's why he makes that comment. But yes, one of the reasons it's always stuck in my head is that it's not a good joke.
Yeah.
It's a very Bernard joke.
And it's glossed over really, like, it's not even
Yes.
played for laughs. It's just like he says something and they move on.
Yeah.
Which is very relatable.
Yeah. And then
So
yeah.
Eugene is obviously, like you said, incredibly manic, is like freaking out, and is begging for it. And Dr. Foster, who's also there, is kind of like saying like, no, like, we gave you the dosage that we knew that we could give you and have it be safe. Like, we can't make things any worse. We could not increase the dosage without contacting like higher ups, basically.
Right.
Like
Basically,
supervisors.
he needs authorization to
Which
do anything
don't
more than this.
understand as to
Yes.
what they're using Wit's technology and their experiences.
Yeah, I imagine him being there adds like an air of legitimacy that he doesn't want to
okay.
compromise. But it is weird that it's like, well, this is like, it's not as though this is regulated.
Yeah.
So why?
It's not
would
like they're
he-
doing it in a government facility or something like that.
And additionally, they once again hit on like the fact that Wit and Foster were able to do it successfully.
Yeah.
Which I really want the details of. Like, so they were able to transfer memories that neither of them had before.
Yeah, or shared experiences. I mean, maybe it could have been something as simple as like their first meeting, you know, because they said
Right.
they transferred shared experiences.
Right.
With somebody
but
that-
they would have already remembered that. That's the
Yeah.
weird thing. Is like I can't quite figure out how they were able to prove that this technology worked, other than they were both sitting there and both had it flash through their mind.
Which would be,
maybe
I
is
think
just-
that's it.
Okay.
I think that's the
Yeah.
only way that they would be able to test it without them.
Yeah. And Eugene gets like uncharacteristically frustrated here.
Yeah. Really.
He comes down with a headache, but he is just mad and snapping at people, and Katrina kind of apologizes for him.
after he leaves.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. And then, like, as a listener, like, you really empathize with Eugene in this. And then, what is it? It cuts to...
That's like our commercial break.
Yeah.
And we come back to Katrina calling Wit and saying, hey, Eugene's disappeared.
Yeah. Eugene's disappeared. Wit thinks that he went to Wit's End.
Well, they all assume.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
like 3 a.m.
He went to Wit's End to
Or actually, Wit says it's 3 a.m. because I have a note about that later.
OD on
So
memories.
then we have a really good musical interlude.
Yeah. It sounds exactly like counter moves.
Yeah, it's like this kind of staccato piano, and then like it continues throughout the scene, and there's like a real good bass line going on, and I love it.
Yeah. It's real. It's groovy.
Yeah, it's such a delight. You know, our man John Campbell just
Coming through.
yeah.
It's funny in my head, like, so there's a lot of common themes and stuff, like, you know, Novacom series, which I have a lot of memories of. I forget how much unique music is in each episode. Like, that's something that is blowing my mind this episode.
It is. He does so much.
Yeah.
For
Each
the show.
episode.
Yeah,
Like-
and I wonder if he. Like, I wonder if that's an era thing. If in the beginning it was a little bit different, but now they do more original music, or if he's, if they've ever like switched out. Because as far as I know, it's always him. But like,
or they cycle through like motifs or something like that.
right? They probably pull back, and I'm sure they reuse stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But in general, the music in this show is really good and very understated.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, so Eugene goes in, talks to the Imagination Station, and gets it to give him all of the memories at once.
Yeah.
Like this segment has memories like Wit's memories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is the point at which you're like, oh, I guess Wit did load his stuff in, and we just skip that, which is fine. But you know, it has his initial introduction.
Yeah. I am a certified genius.
Yeah,
Something like that.
there's a clip of Eugene It's from the Last in a Long Line episode where he tracks down his lineage and finds his grandfather, but like he had passed away the week before.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, that was Eugene alone in that scene. Like,
yeah,
he's talking to someone, but I don't think any of these people are there with him.
It would have been him recapping it and then
it
coming through their imagination, which was perceived as reality, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like, oh, like downloading the memories of, like, if this had worked exactly as they planned, he'd still have huge gaps of memories. Yeah. Although they do describe it as they're trying to unlock a door, not like rebuild it from scratch. So I guess that's the difference. We also get the clip from the scene where he's not valedictorian, and he's the only person at Wit's End who isn't, which is a funny moment in the show. Stuff with Katrina, his Wit coming back after a search for Wit, his wedding, all of that stuff plays through. And then Wit. Does Wit...
it's over.
Okay,
like, he's...
okay, that's what I'm never sure about. Is like, I don't think Wit interrupts the program. I think he arrives as it has ended, but it also sounds like Eugene's still in the imagination station, but maybe it's just like cycling down or something.
Yeah,
when Wit shows up,
it sounds like he's like just too late is what I would describe it as. Like,
and then Wit comes, and then Eugene comes out and is just falling apart.
Yeah, he's freaking out. It didn't work. He's so like. Yeah. I mean, I hope you guys can listen to this episode. It's so good. His voice acting is so convincing, so compelling. And he's just breaking down at this point, and Wit's finally like, we should pray.
And we get a phenomenal Wit prayer.
Yeah.
Like, we've talked before about how there's not a lot of on-air praying in this show, which I think works to its benefit, that they usually cut away from that stuff. But this is so well written, and Paul Harlinger performs it fantastically.
It's so easy to imagine, like, kind of like so for me personally, like, in this moment, Wit reminds me a lot of my dad, where it's like I could come to him with something absolutely bonkers, and he would, like, if we were to pray or something like that, like, he would be so soothing, his presence would be so relaxing, and that's exactly what we get from Paul Herlinger and what we get from Wit in this moment, where Eugene is at his lowest point, where he feels like he can't do anything, and Wit goes from, well, we'll do whatever we need to, like, this isn't forever, like, we'll make this happen, to, like, dear father, like, this is your son Eugene, who you love more than anything, who you love him more than he loves himself, like, which, whatever, self-esteem is a thing, but
but
it's,
he's in a bad spot, right?
Like, it is so powerful and so like gentle.
Yeah, it is gentle. And he's also making peace with, like, he's kind of like, in your timing, your will. Like, he says, like, if you don't do this, like, help us to learn to live with it.
Yeah.
It's
very maternal. Like, I remember my parents praying stuff like that with me as a kid. Yeah. Like, if I would come with them with something like that, or if I was nervous about something, like, they would say, like, if it be your timing, if not, like, help us, give us the grace and the humbleness to understand.
Yeah, it's
so good.
I love it.
And then
Eugene asks about Jack.
Yeah.
And he's like, where's Jack? He was here when I went in, and it's like, that can't be possible. He's on a trip in New York. I talked to him 4 hours ago. It is 3 a.m. 4 hours ago would have been 11. They're in a different time zone. It would have been midnight in New York. Yep. Why was Jack talking to Wit at midnight in New York?
And 1 a.m. Wit's time.
No, 11.
Oh, 11 Wit's time.
Or, I mean, assuming that they're Illinois.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of Midwest is around that time. But if you would get as far west as Wisconsin or something, then it's going to be 2 hours. And it'd be 1 a.m.
Yeah.
His time.
The point is,
they're old men.
Yeah.
And that is late, even if it's 10.
And they're best
I
friends.
have questions.
Yeah.
So
I don't talk to my friends that late most of the time unless we are in person. And even then, I try to go to bed.
Right. Or if, everything just fell apart.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah. And so he's like, and so he's starting to piece together
Connie and Eugene and was it Bernard?
Well, so he's talking. He's recapping the Mortal Coil.
Yes.
Where he went in. Like this is his salvation story. He goes in. Jack's there. He comes out. He and Jack are gonna pray for him to become a Christian. Bernard, Tom, Connie all come in and kind of interrupt.
Yeah.
And they're all there for that moment. But yeah, it's
so good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of doing it, and because it does, this episode does mirror that one so much.
Well, and it could be him losing his mind, or it could be actually him, getting it back.
Right, but he also, if he was losing his mind, he shouldn't have a reference point for Jack at all.
Yeah.
Cause,
unless they had shown him pictures or something like that.
Right, but even then, and it's interesting, his huge pivotal moment with the imagination station that is his spiritual rebirth, and this is a physical rebirth in some ways, or a mental rebirth more than a physical, of him just coming just not being himself and then being himself, and it's really good. And I like just the timing of it all, that this is after their prayer, but it's also pretty close to, Eugene has also started to, gather his thoughts after coming out a bit.
Yeah.
And there's even there's a point later on where Wit's kind of if the imagination station worked at all, it wasn't the whole thing. And I like that acknowledgement that maybe it did play a role, but that was kind of God using it as a tool. This isn't, Wit 100% gives God the credit in this without saying that it was supernatural.
100%. Yeah, without saying
the God, made a miracle happen and gave Eugene his minds back. He's like our prayer is what did this, but what Eugene did may have been God working.
Yeah,
which I think is a really mature way of handling it.
Yeah,
that I super appreciate.
Well, I think that's the right way of handling it, at least. I mean, just acknowledging the fact that God works in, through multiple people and can use any situation and any means to accomplish what he wants.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then Eugene says, I'm feeling a bit lightheaded. And then he passes out.
Faints.
And he's like, I hope you catch me. And then he's just out.
And we go to the hospital, and nurse comes out and lets him know that he's physically okay, but he's unconscious.
Yeah. With no clear understanding.
Yeah.
As to why.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They have no idea why he's unconscious.
And then right away, freaking a nurse comes back out and is like, Katrina told me that I can tell you guys that Eugene's waking up.
Yep.
And she's talking to Wit, but then she says, we want you all to come in.
Yeah, you can all come.
Yeah.
What is the... Oh, there's a good joke in here.
Oh, no, it's Bernard, because Bernard talked, was it last episode, about hitting him upside the head like they do in the movies?
Yes. And then they talk about the fact that he makes the blow to the head joke, but there's also a joke, I think maybe from Tom, where he's they're talking about Eugene, where they're like he's out of his mind or whatever, and Tom's like, well, isn't that the point? He's been out of his mind.
Yeah,
which I think is funny. And there's also the nurse is like, he's hard to understand, and they're all like, yep, that's Eugene, which is great.
Yeah.
So Whit hangs back to talk to
Mr. Foster.
Yeah, talk to Foster about it, and this is where he has the whole thing where he lays out like,
yeah, because Foster is like, well, if your technology did this, then like it could, this is a major scientific breakthrough, and it's like, hold up, maybe, but also God. Like,
yep.
And kind of Foster's like, so you can't or you won't, and he's like, I won't, like, I won't do it. Yeah. And the episode then goes out on Eugene remembering, and then also remembering all like the beefs that he's had with his characters, like Connie arguing with him about everything, and then Connie's like, no, I don't, and he's like, point made.
It's one of the best jokes in the series.
Yeah. And then what's the other one?
He's mad at Bernard for beating him in chess without having strategy.
Yep.
And he's mad at Tom
for being mad at him for using big words.
Yes.
And Tom's like, well, you could say howdy every now and again.
But like it's this great like.
And then he's like, get my ukulele, I want to sing a song.
Yep. And Connie like, this is Katie Lee at her finest here.
Yeah.
Where she's just so giddy.
Yeah, she's so like audibly
and everyone, he mentions the ukulele, and Katrina's like, well, it is out in the car, and everyone kind of groans, and Connie's like, I'll go get it.
I'll go get it.
It's so great. Like, he's back. He remembers.
Yeah.
It's a really good episode.
It's so good, and that's where it ends.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's where where we end, folks. Like, that's.
I feel like somebody has let the air out of me. Oh my Lord. Wow.
I know.
It's like that feeling when you finish a run and you think to yourself, thank goodness I finished that. And then you think, that felt so long.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I enjoyed most of it, if not all of it. But
yeah. I mean, aside from the various technical difficulties we've had.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh man,
there you go.
What a great show.
What a great show. What a great episode. I mean,
it's a good place.
Well,
to
we
go
were
out.
we were talking about it a little bit, off mic, via text, and it's like thinking about our first episode, and like obviously there was some significant improvements from the first to the second episode.
Yeah,
and from there,
but even from the second to now is a huge thing. Like, we've gone through a couple. Aside from going through arcs in the Odyssey series, we have gone through arcs of our own show where we are improving and changing and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and thanks for sticking around with us, Chalk Squad.
Hopefully we can give you a euphoric payoff or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see where we go in the future. You plugging anything this week?
No.
Yeah, I'm not either. But we're gonna be back next week talking about turning a new corner in our series. We're discussing episode 643, Kidsborough Part 1. Mm-hmm. Part 1 of a 3-part series we'll be doing on Kidsborough. And these episodes, in addition to being released on the Truth Chronicles album, they are available for free download via the official Adventures in Odyssey podcast,
which is available on most platforms, if not all.
Yeah, I'll put links in our notes here on where you guys can listen if you haven't heard.
I know for a fact they're on Apple Podcasts because that's how I listened to it originally.
Yeah, I think they're available across I think they're literally released as episodes of the official podcast, which is available anywhere you can find podcasts. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'll be a fun little palate cleanse, a little bridge between whatever we do next.
It's gonna be so weird.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it. Oh. And so yeah, we'll be back doing that next week. Until then, bye guys.
Bye.
Wadfam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at wadfamchalkpod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. Episode 43, A Most Extraordinary Conclusion, was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Sabo and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us next time for more of the Wadfam Chalk Pod.